Growing up, whenever I would go on holiday to see family, I always made it a point to watch a ton of TV local to the UK that you just couldn't find anywhere else. It had a nice, inviting, comforting vibe that as a kid made you want to sit back and endlessly watch as your little brain took in whatever was being blasted into your retinas by your grandparents' TV screen. Cut to the future and I'm all grown up, transitioning from watching nice, wholesome, family-friendly animation and general live-action programming to the weird, esoteric, rebellious side of YouTube that you would never even find within earshot of the mainstream media at the time. And I was there along with the rest of the world to witness some of the defining viral videos of this wave of content.
What's your favourite idea? Mine is being creative.
Don't Hug Me I'm Scared is a name ubiquitous with weird and bizarre YouTube viral videos. A web series that on the surface is very reminiscent of those shows of my childhood but served with a small smattering of shock and underlying horror that makes it so distinct. There's a lot to unpack in this 6-episode series involving its production, craft and underlying messaging, but much like the actual content of Don't Hug Me I'm Scared, jumping headfirst into the deep end would take away from what I'm trying to set up. So yada yada yada, it's 2022, 6 or 7 years after the presumed conclusion of the original web series. And like a phoenix rising from the ashes, DHMIS has returned to the world with another 6 episodes. This time making the jump from the independent and tumultuous platform of YouTube to finding its home on one of the UK's biggest television networks, Channel 4. Which, when you really think about it, is a component of a much greater movement that you're increasingly seeing throughout TV. My first video under this channel name was me covering another show called Smiling Friends, which, while not being a continuation of an already established web series like Don't Hug Me I'm Scared, did come from a similar background, in that it was created by 2 significant and well-respected YouTube animators of the early 2010s, Psychic Pebbles and Michael Cusack, and I made it a point in my video on Smiling Friends that people from the internet pushed into mainstream industries such as television will 9 out of 10 times result in a product that is vastly different from the norm and full of much more creative sensibilities. People from the internet are inherently going to be more accustomed to thinking outside the box and working outside of traditional restrictions of what can or cannot be done in any given field. This isn't 100% the case, of course. Creativity is everywhere and can be seen from anyone regardless of background. It was present long before the internet and has been around since the dawn of mankind. But creating stuff on the internet is a completely different animal than anything, really. Go back in time a couple of years and it was exceptionally rare that you would find anyone or anything that could call themselves self-published. Up until recently, the tools for people to create and distribute their own stuff without significant financing or backup from a publisher, crew or agent was practically impossible. But in the present day, professional level equipment is freely available and unrestricted, and with the internet there are dozens of platforms for you to upload anything you want without having to go through a third party. And when you have that, the result is stuff that is completely unrestricted by censor, producer, or a person that says, "You gotta do it my way." On the internet, it's just you. You're the sole voice behind whatever you make, and inherently that's going to make for a far more interesting project than something that's been filtered and distilled by any kind of formal institution. I hate to be the one to beat a dead horse senselessly to death, but that was the very reason YouTube became so successful, and why in the modern day you're starting to see that weird, esoteric spirit of that time period and genre skyrocket into popularity and wriggle its way into the medium that before it would struggle to be a part of. Such was the case with Don't Hug Me I'm Scared. If you grew up at all like me and used the internet anywhere between 2011 and 2016, then chances are this is a show that you have at least a passing familiarity with. Even if you haven't seen the series, you've definitely seen it pop up or referenced countless times in school whenever someone thought they were funny, saying, "Green is not a creative colour." Which after the first 10 minutes, the bit really started to run thin. The web series was created by Becky Sloan and Joe Pelling, who first met each other as students of Kingston University, both pursuing a degree in fine art and animation, and in 2011 they both started production on the first episode. The project was worked on in the duo's spare time and was produced on a budget of approximately nothing. Made using the resources they had on hand and with a very limited crew, utilising only their knowledge in art and animation to create the show's unique aesthetic. Props, costumes, sets, music and voice acting were all done in-house by Sloan Pelling and a friend of theirs, Terry Baker, all combining into a pretty nice and unassuming set piece that mimicked the style of a Jim Henson puppet show like The Muppets or Sesame Street. And as a result, any parent or kid that gave this thing a passing glance would quickly write the short off as a part of some kids show like The Muppets or Sesame Street. But that's all a facade, a mask, a false perception that what you're watching is a very well crafted and innocent short made for kids about creativity. Can't you blame them For a brief period, it seems to bring back those feelings of nostalgia for a life of innocence and simpler times, like when I was a kid watching all those classic shows from my childhood, but within those 3.5 minutes that persona starts to rot and slowly slip off. You start to feel uneasy, the nice catchy music trails off slowly. What am I actually watching? Wait, is that a human heart being rubbed in glitter? Why is it 3D now? I'm not starting to like this as much.
Now let's all agree to never be creative again.
The video racked up a lot of attention quickly, from innocent children who thought they were watching a Sesame Street short to major publications and institutions, who gave the short countless amounts of praise and acclaim. What was once a short developed out of dissatisfaction for their life's current position ended up becoming a viral hit on the increasingly popular YouTube, a site that as the years went on was becoming more and more legitimized by the talent setting up shop on there. Not just being a place for people to watch videos of people falling over or whatever, now it was clear that YouTube was a place where genuine talent could be found, talent that was worth financing. With the explosion in popularity, it was inevitable that the team would try their hand at following up the viral short that propelled them from obscurity to internet popularity. And even before eventually picking them up, Channel 4 found potential in the group and Don't Hug Me I'm Scared as a whole, and commissioned a second episode from the crew as a part of their Random Acts initiative. So the team did just that, but Sloan, Pelling and everyone else working on the second short wasn't interested in beating a dead equine, hoping it froze up money and similar recognition. Don't Hug Me I'm Scared 2 took the formula that made the first one stand out and applied that to a new thing that built upon the original project. They had more production value, more puppets, and experimented more with multiple media styles to enhance and play around with its premise more. The first one was a quick twist that had its time then moved on. Episode 2, Time, takes it a step further by elongating the subtle discomfort and disturbing undertones from the original throughout its almost 4-minute runtime. From the offset, it's clear that there's something weird and off-color going on, and like the first episode, by the end it makes clear in a much more impactful way that this show is not what it seems both in and out of universe, with a breadcrumb scattered throughout insinuating that this is all a small part of something more overarching. But that's boring and too much work.
Scrub, scrub, scrub till the water's brown.
Once more, following the impressive reception of episode 2, Sloan and Pelling wanted to continue the series but not be tied down by commitment or contract to a larger entity that could risk interfering with where they wanted the series to go, worrying that signing up with another major network would compromise their individuality as well as the sensibilities that made them unique. So as a result, they opted to crowdfund the rest of the series in their own way, with a pretty bizarre Kickstarter campaign that exemplified the spirit of the series. Naturally, this meant showing all these lovable cartoon characters being tied up and held as hostages, recording a ransom video disturbingly reminiscent of something like an ISIS video or that of Voss from Far Cry 3, demanding money for the safe return of whoever's people. But these aren't people. It's a duck, a straw red thing, and a Bart Simpson, Marge Simpson puppet baby. Instead of asking for something nefarious like nukes or a weapon cache, they're asking for that sweet Kickstarter cash to finance more of the series to be made. A goal they quickly met and used to produce 4 additional episodes. From here, it's a no-brainer where the series went. They got more episodes, were more successful, and cemented an amazing legacy. And as much as I'd like to go through all these episodes, dissect their meaning, craft, and structure, it would be hitting the nail on the head a little too hard, as I've already written that theoretical anecdote upon anecdote, and the end result is just me reiterating the same points I've made this far. Don't Hug Me I'm Scared's meaning is one that pretty explicitly does not matter. Let me rephrase. Don't Hug Me I'm Scared's grand messaging is very purposeful. Sloan and Pelling had made an active attempt to, as the series went on, hint at an overarching story, show that everything wasn't right with the world, and use subtle Easter eggs and understated character moments to point towards some kind of context. It propelled the shorts from something that could easily be disregarded as the viral video equivalent of one of those old line games where you try and navigate your mouse around a maze, in an attempt to avoid an evil witch popping on screen to give you a fright that would leave you shaking for all of 15 seconds. With Internet Puppet Show, there's a method to the madness and there's a story it's trying to tell, but it's not an overt one. If you want to take it at face value, you can, and if you want to treat the series as a 6-episode puzzle that's begging to be figured out and analysed, you're welcome to that as well. Because it's clear that it's something that the creators of the show are playing with as well. The recurring date throughout each episode, the lessons that spiral into teaching something that is either incredibly unhelpful or antithetical to the lesson it should be teaching. These things are no accident, and it's up to your own interpretation what those things mean. Is it a satire of how the insertion of advertising or putting profits first in children's television is detrimental to the young minds of those who watch it? Is it about how creativity and outside thinking is disencouraged in our modern day culture? Following on from that is the series as a whole providing a scathing look into society's inner machinations and how it promotes rigid conformity to a system before anything else. As kids, we're sent into education where sticking to the path is encouraged. To take in your lesson and not ask questions, to not look beyond your small isolated bubble and question what people above you tell you. Move past the naive and small world of childhood to where as an adult you're faced with a similar prospect. You work all day, remaining within a bubble where you're expected to complete your task and listen listen to the words of your superiors. Build yourself a routine where time becomes liquid and each day bleeds into the next. An identical series of events, shoved into a claustrophobic viewport where reaching outside the box to pursue other adventures is stomped out to keep you stuck in your situation, with a few things littered throughout to try and provide us a reason to go on. Love, religion, entertainment, food, etc. Is it all just a recursive loop, filled with short-term dopamine rushes to keep the masses docile and complacent with their lot in life, while whoever pulls the strings in the background gets to puppet us around like stuffed animals on a string? The answer is probably no, and I'm just reaching. There's a meaning there, but it's a Rorschach test. Whatever you see when looking at it as far as the series is concerned is correct and reflects a lot about what you believe as an individual. Judging by context clues, it's pretty obvious what I believe the show's subtext is. I don't think it's any coincidence that all the lessons follow a mantra of, don't think about it, don't do that, and accept that what will be, will be. When all is said and done, DHMIS was a very good web series that served as a clear display that if you give people the right tools, they'll inevitably create something great. But despite the series seemingly ending with a fairly conclusive and final moment, with Red pulling the plug on the series, separating itself from an external entity that wanted to pollute its intending messaging and disconnecting itself from it, transitioning from a flashy, well-produced and muddied show to one that's independent with less money but much more creative freedom. If that's your interpretation, of course. Couldn't be mine.
But wait! What happened to the people after it ended?
Yeah, did they go away and never come back?
No, of course not. There was so much love and care poured into the series, and following on from its conclusion and success, they were offered several opportunities to keep pursuing their passions. They made this really cool ad for St. John's Ambulance, and they got a chance to create a whole episode of The Amazing World of Gumball. Another show that's well known for using several different styles of animation to create its world and make it stand out. With Sloan and Pelling at the helm, they brought with them their incredible production value, signature tone, and its catchy as fuck music. Even though the series may have wrapped up, it was clear that Sloan and Pelling weren't going anywhere. Their craft, talent, and personality demanded that they do more. Another opportunity to return to the characters of DHMIS, and this time through a new medium and a much more mainstream audience.
Wakey wakey, to the new day.
Okay, to some of you who have actually seen the new Channel 4 show, you're probably sat here questioning what episode this footage I'm showing is from, and why it's being shown through the pristine viewing glass of somebody's iPhone 8. And that's because this isn't the Channel 4 show Don't Hug Me I'm Scared. This is the precursor to that series and a piece of the initial pilot called Wakey Wakey. A show that was picked up by a US production company called Conoco and was estimated for a 2019 release that never ended up happening. The pilot is now regarded as a piece of lost media. The trailer was removed in May of this year, and the only footage anyone has of the pilot is this cam rip that somebody took from its only showing during the 2019 Sundance Film Festival. And even then we don't have the whole thing. The footage cuts out halfway through, and from there it's all just description from somebody who was present during the showing. But the pilot to this day remains a pretty bizarre piece of Don't Hug Me I'm Scared's history because its premise is so radically different from the original web series. Instead of being in a couple of confined and claustrophobic rooms with an underlying sense of tension and discomfort, Wakey Wakey takes place in a pleasant little town called Clay Hill, filled with an assortment of wacky and colourful characters and a much broader world that can be explored. But that's not me trying to say that the show features none of these trademarks of the original series. As a pilot, this does a good job of setting up the premise and also hinting that there's something off going on behind the curtain that we or the characters aren't aware of. If Wakey Wakey went forward and Clay Hill ended up as the primary setting, I have no doubt Joe and Becky would have delivered an amazing show. But unfortunately that didn't happen, and Wakey Wakey disappeared from the public eye for good.
I'm sorry, that place doesn't exist anymore.
What? What happened to it?
Just shriveled up, I reckon.
In an interview with The Guardian, Becky Sloan described the show as
a bit South Park.
And that they
also made an attempt, and I'm going to whisper this because it almost sounds like a dirty phrase, to get an element of current affairs into it.
And that's evident in the pilot. There's an Alexa analog there and a lot of things that could be correlated to the current political situation of when the pilot was made. But that show's done, and in the interim between them showing off Wakey Wakey to now, they went back to the drawing board and reevaluated their strategy on what could be done to keep the series firmly planted in its roots, while still being approachable to a mainstream audience. Writing the series in lockdown did a lot to recapture that old sense of isolation and anxiety you saw in spades with the original series. Everyone around them was trapped in an existence like the characters of Don't Hug Me I'm Scared, being confined to a few rooms with a lack of exposure to the outside world or people within your immediate circle. Each day started to bleed into the next, and time started to become a liquid, stagnant substance that would quickly pass from a day to a week to a month, and so on. An atmosphere we were all desperate to escape. It's kind of funny to think of how the first series ended and the ethics behind it to now. Fuck society, go against the grain, unplug yourself from the system, be independent. Sloan and Pellinger in the original series were paranoid that partnering up officially with a network like Channel 4 would mean they'd have to compromise their vision and change things up to accommodate. And now, 8 years after asking for Kickstarter money to avoid that, they're officially partnered with Channel 4. Not only being financed, but airing on their platform, and for what it's worth, they were in ways correct. Going from YouTube in the early to mid 2010s to a major television network in the modern day, it inevitably meant that they would have to change up their format and approach to accommodate the network and your average Channel 4 enjoyer. But this isn't a bad thing by any means. Going back in time, I mentioned Smiling Friends, and going back 8 to 9 months, I said that Smiling Friends forced its creators to switch up tenets of their sensibilities to match up with the limitations and constraints of network television. Don't hug me, I'm scared's face value gimmick doesn't work anymore, both on the internet and on TV. Initially, a core component of why the original short got so much success was because it lured its viewers into a false sense of security, got them into thinking they were watching Tony Soprano's Sesame Street, and then midway through revealed its dark and twisted hand. Cute and funny puppets paired with guts and uncomfortable presentation equals a video that would perform good when it came out. It's clickbait. You think you're watching one thing, then all of a sudden the rug gets pulled out from under you. But TV doesn't really have that. DHMIS isn't going to lure in people by tricking them into thinking it's a simple kids show. Standards and practices have rules preventing that possibility. The channel has to state its age rating, the show can only air in the evenings or late afternoons when kids aren't watching, and when you're trying to market the show to a specific demographic, you can't muddy it by tricking people into thinking it's a kids TV show. The way I watch stuff on the internet is far different than how I watch TV. On YouTube, I'll click on anything that has an interesting thumbnail or title, anything that appears in my up next after I finish watching something. TV is a lot less passive, as a conscious choice has to be made of what to watch, and it's more of a time commitment than slapping on a 3-minute short that you thought looked neat. As a result, the show is a different animal entirely. It still maintains its roots as a kids TV show that got fucked up somewhere, but from the offset it shows that this is not what it appears. Same thing that happens still happens. The three of them sit in a room, get given a funny lesson, there's a funny song, there's a funny bit of blood, guts and underlying dread. All for it to reset next episode with more and more hints towards the reality and the characters breaking.
We live in an actual nightmare!
That's another thing too. In the original series, there wasn't a lot of opportunity for the trio to be defined characters, more so being a bundle of funny traits that were easily identifiable. Red Guy was monotone and somewhat self-aware of his situation. Yellow, Marge Simpson Bart Boy was dumb, naive and innocent, a stand-in for the intended child audience of the show. And Duck was proper and had a robot voice.
Oh look, there he goes, flying through the sky.
Which is fine, they didn't need to be. DHMIS had a message it wanted to express, and the characters were vessels used to tell the story around. In the TV show, however, the characters are to me the driving force of the show. I love these little guys, and the show gives them so many more moments to stand out from each other and expand on their traits from the original series. Red, Yellow and Duck all have a dynamic now and their own unique things that make them stand out. I mean, just look at Duck, someone who in the original was pretty replaceable to now being the best one. He's really up his own ass and has a superiority complex, thinking he's the cool, respected adult of the group that everyone looks up to, positioning himself as the leader of the group. Which is why during the job episode, he's the only one that doesn't fit into the place unlike the rest of the guys. He's aspirational and wants more out of his position, which leads him to being repeatedly punished and conditioned by the system he's in. Talking about the original series, I thought a lot of it was meant to be an allegory and criticism of society and how it tries to condition everyone in it to fit inside of a narrow system, where individuality and going against the status quo was disencouraged. The first episode of the actual series is very heavy on that theme, being a criticism of the 9 to 5 and uses it as an opportunity to introduce all the characters. Duck was aspirational and wanted to be at the top instead of the bottom and was punished for it. Yellow was very naive and easily satisfied and adapts to the system well, leading to him spending 40 years of his life toiling away at a job that didn't really get him anything but a sliver of recognition and a plaque. Red likes validation and is insecure, so when put into a position of power where he constantly receives said validation, it goes to his head and he wanders his way through a position he didn't earn but fell into. The core themes of the show are still around, but the teachers aren't as crucial to illustrating that theme as the characters. They're the ones that we see this world through, and how they react is what informs the story. There's a lot to analyze in this show. It's filled to the brim with depth and things to pick apart. If I were to go through all the little tidbits, Easter eggs and what it all means, I'd be here forever, and I'd be much more interested in hearing other discourse about it anyway. I just think it's neat how the creators of this series were able to translate the writing and themes of the YouTube shorts into a 22-minute TV show and have it be incredibly entertaining. Even if you're not into the deep thematic nuances of this creepy show about puppets that experience existential horrors, then just enjoy all the funny moments and cool stuff. Also, you gotta have a ton of appreciation for the visuals visuals of this show. The original series made the most of its budget in every episode, experimenting with different media styles and filmmaking techniques to the point that you can call out an episode just by what kind of medium they used in it. Watching the finale of the web series, I vividly remember when it switched from puppetry to 2D animation to back to puppetry to really grounded looking live action. Likewise, the new show does this as well. You have fun puppet stuff, 2D animation, whatever this style could be called, and some really amazing stop motion animation. You can tell going into the new series that there was much more of an attempt to emulate kid shows from around the creators' childhoods. A lot of it might just be me reaching, but the amount of times the show managed to take small snippets of memory from my childhood about shows I used to watch, then quickly dash them without much ceremony was a real treat. The internet breeds opportunity. Go back in time to when YouTube first started getting its footing in popular culture, and the idea of using the internet as a career path and an opportunity to start your own business sounded like an optimistic fool's errand. But then as the years have gone on, people who used to upload shit on the internet for the hell of it in the early 2010s have gone on to make massive strides across multiple industries. Just narrowly focusing our view on entertainment, people who got their start on YouTube are now getting their time in the sun on TV. Zach Cato and Michael Cusack, two former Newgrounds and YouTube animators, have gone on to create one of the best Adult Swim shows of recent years. Just looking at Michael Cusack, the guy has made several shows and did a short for one of the biggest animated series in the whole world. And Vivzipop, another YouTube animator, has gone on to start her own animation studio and independently produce 2 passion projects that are incredibly successful and have garnered a passionate fan base. I'm cherry picking examples of course, but as time goes by, the internet and its content creators are going from being separate to mainstream industries to now being a part of it. It's a new world, and the methods and training behind network television is going the way of the dodo. In a way, it's like the world of Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared. You go through the traditional means of getting into the entertainment industry, going to uni, getting your degree, getting a job, being stuck in a mediocre position for years and years until your aspirations slowly fade away. It's designed to keep you in a box, to not try and colour outside the lines until you settle into a mediocre position. But on the internet, that standard doesn't exist. You're free to experiment, be weird, and break the expectations and standards that held you back.